everyone, it's Jen. I have a couple of cards to share with you today and then a tutorial that will follow on how I altered these wood veneers, which are super easy. These are the wood veneers from Michaels. So this is the first card that I made, and I used watercolors and gesso and a little bit of glitter on this one, and just layered some papers. I did a die cut back here with some leaves I had so that you had this little peekaboo cutout, and then put just a couple of, I'm not sure if these are the Tim Holtz like Thinlit flower dies, but just cut out a couple of those. And then this trim here there is some new vintage like shabby trims at Michaels, and they're super pretty, and they come in like sets of 5. So that's where these trims are from. And did that on the inside. I put a couple little leaves on the back of that one. And then this rose, again, I'm going to go through, the process was a little bit different for the two of these, and so that's going to follow. And these die cuts here are a Darcy die cut set that are just, they get smaller, progressively smaller with different little edges on them. But I really like those, and these are some heavyweight chipboard little words. I have been using this set of words for years. I have this big sheet of them, and they just, as much as I use them, they don't seem to disappear, but I really like those. And did that on the inside. And then for this one I made, this is, the base of this one is watercolor paper. The base of this one is a card set from the paper source, so I had the coordinating envelope and then just put the little address spots on there to coordinate with the card. So I'm going to attach the tutorial. You guys have a super great day. Bye-bye. The wood veneers, and these are different than the ones that I used on the cards. And that is some gesso. And for this one, the first thing I'm going to do is just put a thin layer of gesso over the wood veneer, and that is going to help my watercolor not seep into the wood. And you'll see when I do the rose, I do it without the gesso, so you get a little bit different look. So I'm just drying my gesso, and then I'm going to take my palette of watercolors and just paint right on top of the gesso, and I'm not being careful other than where I'm going around the leaves there. And so what I do with this one is I put the color on, then I lift some of the color off with a paper towel. And I think when I did the ones on the card, I let the color sit quite a bit longer, so I sprayed it to lift it off. And you'll see here in a minute when I spray it and lift it off, I actually lift off more color than I wanted to, so then I go back in and add some more color. And the great thing about these wood veneers is if you get all done with it and you really don't like the colors you chose or something like that, you can just put a coat of gesso back over the top and start over. So I've got some fuchsia and some red and some orange in there, and now I'm spraying it, and you'll see me pat it off here, and it lifted just a little bit too much color. So I am going to go back in and add a little bit of color around the border as well as in the centers. I add some orange, and then I come in and add just a little bit of pink to blend that. But these wood veneers make great, they can make a great focal point on your card, and you know, like the two cards that I did, or you can use them as more of an embellishment, especially if you get some of the smaller ones. I'm just going to add 2 different colors of green, and when you're using the watercolors, I mean, like when I'm going from the flowers to the leaves, you want to make sure that your flowers are dry, otherwise the watercolor from the leaves is going to seep over there. That happened a little bit on the ones that I had done on the card, but again, it's watercolor, so it doesn't make too much of a difference. And here I'm going to use some decoupage. I really like this matte medium. I am putting a layer on here, and I am going to take my flower and just press it in there. And the reason I'm doing that is because I do not want that watercolor to smear or reactivate if I were to use a brush. So I just kind of dip it in there, and I'm using here just a tiny bit of dry distress glitter. I didn't want a ton of it on there, so that's why I'm doing it by hand. And then you'll see that I come in with a brayer and a piece of paper, and the reason I'm using the brayer is twofold. One, I want to remove any bubbles that may have been in the matte medium, and I also want to push that glitter down into the matte medium. So I set that aside to dry. Now for the rose, I'm going straight with the watercolor to the wood veneer, so the color does seep into the wood. This one is a little bit more, you can get different looks depending on how much water you put into your watercolor mix there. So this is a little bit thicker. It's more dense color than what I used with the wood veneer on the card. But again, they all come out a little bit differently. If you use obviously if you use a more watered down wash, you're going to get a different look. And it will really seep into the wood quite a bit, but you can always add more color. It is harder to remove color without the gesso. So if you want that look of having the color removed, you really need to put the gesso on there. I'm sure if I sprayed this, I could get some of the color off, but it's already seeping into the wood. So my next step here was supposed to be stamping the polka dots on, but I was not paying attention. So I kind of did the third step second, and then I go back and stamp it. But I'm using some very old super gloss medium there. And then I dropped some gesso on top of it, so it's not really mixed together much, but I want that whitewash look. And now I'm adding in just some more of the gloss medium. It's just Mod Podge Super Gloss. Actually, this is very old, and I don't even know if they sell the Super Gloss anymore. I have not been able to find it. And I'm just using my little awl tool there to get some of the extra gloss medium off. And then right here is where I realized, oh my gosh, I forgot to stamp it. So I'm deciding what I'm going to do. So I tap off a little bit of that because I do want to go back and stamp it, and it was pretty textured with the way that I had put the gloss medium on there. And again, when you're altering these, you can do it however, there's a million different ways to do it. So I'm drying it really good so that I can come back in and stamp my polka dots on there. And for this, I'm using archival ink, which is a permanent ink. And this ended up working just fine. So I have my stamps on, or my polka dots on there. And then I am going to come back in after I dry it here and add one more coat of the gloss medium. And the reason I'm doing that, I could stop with it just like this. But the reason I'm doing that is because I want to come in after it dries and add some highlights with my Pitt Artist pens. And so I need that gloss medium on there so that I can smear the ink from those pens. And so I set the rose aside to dry a little bit. And so now this one is done. I just finished drying it. And I am going to come in with the heat gun and dry this one as well. Just making sure it's really good and dry, because if I were to add the color from the Pitt pens and it wasn't dry, I would have a big mess. And all you do with this is you just put a little bit of the ink down, and then you smear it with your finger, and it gives a really nice highlight, kind of mixed media color effect. And you can do as much or as little of this as you would like. You can really change the tone and color of a piece by doing this. And then I'm going to do just a little bit of green here and there. And so this one definitely has a little bit of a heavier mixed media look maybe than the other one, but I absolutely love them. I hope you guys too, and I do too, and I hope you found this helpful. I will talk to you soon. Bye-bye.